Chapter 67. Reputation. Summary. It's time to start gaining a reputation if they want to become space pirates. And would you look at that? A perfect opportunity. Denki bounced up and down in the pilot seat as he enlarged the blinking pink message. Now that he actually knew what the different colors of distress meant, he was pretty eager to put that knowledge to good use. Apparently, aliens have different color associations than humans, so pink is the least urgent, then comes orange, and finally blue is the most urgent. A little odd, but okay. Ever since they decided to become space pirates, which he could still not get over how cool that was, he started learning everything he could to make that dream a reality. On one of his hyperfixation deep dives back on Earth, he learned everything the internet had to offer on pirates, which meant he was actually the most well-informed one for once. It was a weird feeling. Being the most learned, he wasn't about to fight it. He was actually really excited. They talked for a couple of hours about how best to build their reputation. Not only did they want to get recognizable as quickly as possible, but they wanted to build the right brand. Every good pirate ship needs a good brand. And they unanimously agreed to steer away from the traditional pirate brands of brutalization. Earth pirates were just going to inspire their new pirate ventures, not be the end-all be-all of pirate rules. They were going to be cool pirates who helped people who kicked villains' kneecaps. Which apparently might be a thing that happens because according to the squad that must not be named, nice one, Ochako, alien bones could be very weak. Where they got this information, they wouldn't say, but they seemed very adamant about it. If they weren't going the traditional route, they still had to come up with their own brand, to try and end fights before they started. They still needed villains shaking in their boots at the mere mention of their name. What would that name be? They hadn't decided. In superhero movies, didn't the public generally choose the name? Now that would be cool. But that was even more reason to get their general theme decided upon at the beginning. Well, besides Oxyus, but they couldn't do anything but build on the impression they gave off there. And what impression was that? Eldritch Horror! Which basically was the direction they wanted to go for. They were already seen as terrifying, thanks to being Terran Deathworlders, so just not keeping that a secret would go a long way in that department. Izuku had been opposed to the idea, but when it was pointed out that it would eventually travel from Oxyus, when they got well enough known, he gave in. Denki wasn't sure how to give off intimidating but otherworldly deity, as opposed to dumbass, but he'd figure it out. He was just so excited about becoming the universe's cryptids, but like Mothman type of cryptids. The kind that he would not want to fight in a dark alley, but would love to hang out with in any other situation. That's how most people felt about Mothman, right? At least that's how he felt about Mothman. And now it was time to start building their reputation, because that pink flash means someone needs their help. Denki leans in closer, but the odd symbols of the message swim in his vision as he tries to decipher them, with his still nearly non-existent understanding of written basic. It wasn't going very well, so he didn't protest when Mei shoved herself in front of the screen, squishing him to the side a bit. "Looks like a planet is asking for help," Mei said, half on top of him. "A whole planet?" Denki questions. "Can we handle something if a whole planet can't deal with it?" "Small planet. We'll be fine." Mei weighs off. "Looks like there's only 5 major cities, all around the same area." "Small planet indeed," Mina mused, leaning over Denki like she had any idea what the words say. He is starting to get really squished. Why can't they just go to Nav, or weapons? Wait, that's where Katsuki is. What about Izuku's side, where he's attempting to read the message on his own? Mei scrolled through the message. "Seems like they're having trouble with a terrorist sect who are against non-native species immigrating to their planet. A new anti-discrimination law was put into place recently, and in response, they started firebombing cities, which is a problem if all of their houses are made of tree." "Wood?" Izuku asked, but Mei shakes her head. "Nope. Tree! They build their homes in living trees. Their whole planet is basically a forest. So some space racists are bitching about equal rights. Seems pretty clear-cut. Let's go in and blow up their asses. Katsuki half shouts from where he's watering their plants. But if a whole planet needs help, why isn't the space government helping? Ochako asks. Which, yeah, the last people they had helped were pirates, so it made sense no one would help them. But a whole planet? They're essentially in a lower-class district of space. Planets like this don't get as much funding or police coverage, Mei explains. Pushing down the little bitter thread that rises up, Denki says, "Well, then I guess it's up to us to help them." Slightly muffled by the two bodies on top of him. Mei wasn't kidding. The planet was basically one big forest. Dinky's glad they had designated landing zones because he definitely would not have been able to land in one of the small groves. Turns out, crashing an escape pod in a forest is a lot easier than landing a ship, without crashing it, in one. Who knew? The ground was soft as he stepped out of the ship and into the damp forest air. Colorful birds flitted between branches high above, sending streaks of shadows and sorrowful songs to the forest floor. Tree roots twisted out of the dirt, making the terrain difficult to traverse. Dinky had never been to a rainforest or a redwood forest before, but if they had a baby, this is what it would be like. The trees absolutely towered above them, tall as skyscrapers and thick as fire trucks. Wow, Izuku gaped, spinning in a circle as he took everything in. Yeah, man, Denki replied. Wow is right. Katsuki scoffed, scuffing his boot against the ground. It's a forest. Big whoop. Let's just find the extras in charge so we can beat the villains. Just a forest? Mina scolded. This is what I was talking about before. Where are you going to find a forest like this on Earth? You're not. This is so cool. Now, that Denki could get on board with. Space road trip for the win! Because seriously, this was so cool. He may not be big on nature and all, but even he couldn't deny how cool this place was. And to think he never would have seen it if they hadn't been taken. Kachan is right, though, Izuku says, tearing his eyes from the thin, sun-splattered canopy. We really should focus on finding the capital city. They said it was nearby in their response, just a little further north, I think. Mei nodded, whipping out a small tablet. Should be just over there. She pointed to a path that Denki hadn't noticed before, one that leads into the dark, shaded bowels of the forest. He gulped. Without a word, Katsuki pushed forward, leaving the rest of them to follow behind. Sunlight was quickly snuffed out by the thickening ceiling of leaves, leaving them blanketed in darkness. Pyerpa was latched onto his arm, tail swishing anxiously as they pushed forward. How much farther was this tree city? After only a minute of darkness, a glow appeared in the distance, soft and blue, trailing up the bark of a tree. Denki strained his eyes to see if the light came from windows, to see if they were there yet, but as they drew closer, he saw another glow, orange this time. As they traveled deeper, the forest was lit up by multicolored glows, bioluminescent mushrooms and moss lighting their way in the dark. Not a word was spoken until they arrived in the city. The upper branches were covered in yellow glowing moss, filling the space with light, much like the sun. Little entrances were burrowed into the gargantuan trees, and little people came and went. Denki craned his head up, watching people scurry across woven paths between trees without fear of the deadly distance to the ground. But maybe that had to do with the fact that most of the people he saw had pale moth-like wings adorning their backs like cloaks. The moth people had 2 sets of fluffy arms, as well as voluminous collars of setae, the hair-like structures that some invertebrates have. Thank you, late-night Wikipedia. Feather-thin antennae flowed behind them as they scurried from place to place. The other kind of people he saw as they traveled further into the city had more in common with the glowing fungus that sprung from the trees than the moth folk. Their limbs appeared as if dipped in ink, black compared to the dark and vibrant colors in their bodies. They sauntered from place to place, as opposed to the spastic scurry of the other species. Atop their heads sat mushroom caps that glowed a more vibrant glow than the multitudes of the ones they passed by. Dinky couldn't tell if it was some sort of accessory or if the caps were part of their bodies. But as they arrived at the entrance of the Capitol building without him seeing a single one without one, he leaned towards it being part of their bodies. The entrance to the massive tree, at least as thick as a whale is long, was draped in silky curtains. Ahead of them stood 3 people, 2 moths and 1 mushroom. Dinky couldn't get a read on the mushroom person, their face perfectly blank, but he could tell the moths looked a bit hesitant.
"Are you the ones who responded to our call?"
The pink moth asked in a chittering voice.
"We are,"
Ochako smiled, not letting any teeth show.
"Can you tell us more about your situation?"
An Atunka group has been firebombing towns and cities in protest of the new anti-tapie laws. With the influxus of mycelia fleeing their dying world, a lot of change has been occurring in a relatively short time frame,"
the other moth person said, and oh boy did they use a lot of big words. Okay, Mr. Monocle Moth with your shiny gold monocle, be like that. Dinky was going to assume the first word was terrorist. The rest, he's not sure. The mushroom person slowly nodded.
"Most here have been welcoming of my people, but the ones who aren't do not care who they hurt to express their hate. We do not wish to bring harm to those who showed us great kindness. Will you help us?"
"Wait!"
the pink one interjected.
"These are dangerous people. Are you sure you can handle it? You look like you've barely come out of pupation."
Wait, why in space does Dinky know the word for pupation in basic? That weird moth dude at work that was obsessed with light from electricity. He was very weird.
"Pupation?"
Mina whispers in question. That thing caterpillars do before they become moths, with the cocoon and stuff. He whispered back, eliciting an ah of understanding from more than a few members of the group. "We're more than fucking capable of dealing with some hit-and-run cowards," Kotsky barked. "Just tell us where to find them." The 3 aliens exchanged wary looks, but after a minute, they came to a silent agreement. The mushroom person stepped forward.
"They hide in the cliffs, living in earthen tunnels until their next attack. We can give you the location of their effleurement, but we do not know which holes they have chosen to hide in."
Kotsky grinned sharply. "They won't know what hit 'em."